So there's an article out by Centerstone.org that talks about stress in 4 areas, and it's all pouring into this bucket, and they call it the stress bucket. So you have all of these different areas where stress can pour in, and they have 4 areas. And the first area is performance based, which most people would call work based, and they also suggest it could be school, so students can have a stressful school experience, and that would be performance based because it's based on grades and it's based on work performance. And then we have environmental based, which is what's happening around you. So if for some reason Masha was with us in person, not just in spirit, and Michelle and I were arguing with each other really, really, really badly, that could be a very stressful environment for Masha to be in. Not even talking about the stress that Michelle and I are putting each other through, which would be interpersonal stress. So interpersonal stress is when you're having conflicts with people that you know, or face to face, or just interacting with people. Introverts, it's always stressful to interact with new people, whether it's good stress or bad stress. Initially, it's bad stress because you have to interact. So, and then the last one is interpersonal, which is within. So it's what's happening to your body, what's happening to your mind, and what's causing stress in that way. So if you get an injury and you're hurt and you can't do what you need to do, you're kind of feeling stress, and it's not caused by any outside thing, it's caused within your body. So let's break these down some more. I just did a brief overview of them. What's your guys' opinion on performance-based? Do you have any thoughts or examples?
Michelle and I are looking at each other because we have tons of examples of that in our corporate experience managing a very complex audit program for our healthcare organization. And my goodness, we worked with so many people that we can actually relate to all 3 of those top 3 stressors, the performance, environment, and interpersonal, but focusing primarily on performance. We had so many last minute complications that it was sometimes doubtful that we will persevere and push through, which required the team, not just Michelle and myself, to spend multiple weeks of night and weekend hours to fix these very complex processes to the point where we were satisfied and the leadership was satisfied. And when it comes to that crunch, you have this different level of anxiety that's fueling your performance. And you know it's temporary because you have a deadline. You have to meet the deadline. And because of that, you just push, and you sacrifice so much of your well-being. But you know it's temporary, and you know that it's going to be really rewarding to finish it. And then there's a reward. Michelle, what do you have to add to that one?
Yeah, I agree. It had both, that eustress, the good stress, because you knew you were going to get through it one way or another, even if it was, nights there at the office till midnight. On the other hand, there was definitely some distress in the middle of that deadline cycle where you're just so tired. So yes, I absolutely agree. I have an example that came to mind actually Masha, before you and I worked together. The first partner that I worked with, she had this crazy stress reaction to these once a month meetings. And I just remember when I first started, because she was like, you're presenting. She's like, you're going to present, you're going to answer the questions. I'm like, okay, fine. That's fine with me. And she was physically ill the morning of that meeting. And I was like, what is going on with you? Like, why are you so stressed about this meeting? And come to find out, in her experience, because she had been in this department before, she'd moved to a different role, but she's like, oh my goodness, they just attack you this whole meeting. And they're just going to sit there and nitpick you and ask you questions and say you're wrong. And so that's why she was so stressed. What was funny though was I didn't actually find it as stressful as she was making it out to be, which, is interesting because she was so stressed about her performance and the performance of our department. And me as a new person, I was like, yeah, they asked some questions. It wasn't that bad.
Interesting you say that, because my very first experience in one of those meetings, if you remember, you were still training me, and we had the operational leader meeting to discuss the rates that they have to, we felt so good about it. We felt so prepared. We go in, we're professional, and she completely devours us. And after the meeting, I'm like, are they all like this? Because if they are, I'm gone. I can't do this. Because it was a complete attack, and I did not handle that well at all.
Yeah. And just I was thinking about, not just work based. I think there's also performance based in our personal lives, because if you have things outside of work, projects you're working on, or personal goals, and you may have a to-do list that is, a mile long for your weekend. So we tend to think about it with work or with school, but I think we also have this in our personal lives.
I agree. And we say it's work-based or school-based, but any type of like sports profession or whatever, or if you're just a amateur athlete, there's a lot of stress involved in that too. So, and that's definitely performance-based.
Absolutely.
I find it interesting, and maybe this is a topic for another time, about how everybody reacts a little bit differently to a stressful situation, how they see it differently. And part of that is probably whether they're a pessimist like me or an optimist like Masha, or Michelle's kind of an optimist too, but she's not as squirrely as she is.
What was that?
Michelle is a realist. She's a perfect mix of optimism down to just enough spice of reality, to the point where she tells Masha, I don't know, this is just way out there.
See, that's why you have to have her around. She comes to your defense very well.
That's right. Right. And I have to come to her defense and say that we're both a bit of squirrels.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So.
How we survived the corporate world. We squirreled a lot, but we still got things done.
So the next one on the list is environment-based. What are some examples that we face in our environment that causes us stress? Oh, I got a good one. So
go for it.
Michelle and I are full-time RVers, and we were traveling from one location to the next, and I did some not so smart things, and they ended up being in an accident. And that was definitely a very stressful time, and that was definitely based on the environment that I was in. Because traffic was screaming by, we were waiting. Well, first the fire department showed up, then the Brighton police showed up, and then they couldn't do anything because they were out of jurisdiction. So then we had to wait for the Colorado State Patrol to show up, and 45 minutes later, they're finally showing up, and that was not an enjoyable experience for me, and that was definitely an environment-based experience.
Yep.
I tell you what, Michelle, do you have a comment about the same story? Because I'm not sure I heard about it, so I'm really curious there.
Yeah, I will say that we've been full-time RVing now for almost 2 years, which is amazing. But I will say that some of my strongest stress responses have happened in that RV as we've been going down the road. There was another time when we were going through, we were south of Dallas and going through the city of Waco. They were doing road construction, and there were these big trucks with concrete. I don't actually know what they are, Brian. I'm sure as the engineer, you know what they are. All I know is the concrete pieces they were hauling were hanging over the side of the truck, and they were taking up way more than the width of that truck. And we had to pass them in a construction zone. And my stress response was so bad because I saw the concrete like inches from my face, literally. I just had to close
please.
my eyes. I literally couldn't keep my eyes open.
There was a good 3 to 6 inches between it and the mirror.
Like I said, inches away from my face.
We got through that one. It turned into eustress. It was better than what mine turned into.
Right.
So as we start looking into interpersonal, I think this one kind of speaks for itself a little bit. I don't know how many examples we really need. Is there anything other than examples that you guys want to speak into on this?
Well, I do think that this one is sometimes overlooked because, particularly with loved ones, our friends, our family, and our coworkers, colleagues that we, often respect. I think we just tend to overlook this sometimes, that as much as we love them and enjoy them, that there can also be a level of either good stress or bad stress. It can happen either way.